Peplink has released a new 5G mobile router at a very aggressive price point. It's here. Is it right for you? Come along with us. I'll tell you all about it. Hey folks, Eric with MobileMustHave.com and RoamLink.com, and today we're going to be talking about the new Max BR1 Mini, but we're also going to kind of expand this video a bit and kind of talk about the various 5G options that are out there in the marketplace for folks that might be new to the game here. So if you stumbled upon this video because this is a new product release and you find out this isn't a fit for you, that's okay, because we're going to kind of talk about some of the other options, the BR1 Pro 5G and the BR2 Dual 5G, as well as cover the B1 5G. And those are really kind of the main options right now for mobile internet if you're interested in a 5G mobile router. So what's new? Well, they've added Wi-Fi, as I said before. Prior to this, the Max BR1 Mini 5G under the hood is largely the same as the current model, except for they've added Wi-Fi to it. So prior to this, really the focus of the BR1 Mini, which is still available, would be for either IoT deployments where you really just need to get 5G connected up to an Ethernet port to bring something online, or for us and for mobile users, what was fairly popular with the BR1 5G Mini is upgrades, using synergy mode to plug it into an existing setup. So if you had a transit or another device that maybe was 4G only capable and you wanted to add 5G, the non-Wi-Fi version was really good for that at a very aggressive price point, at the filming of this at around $500. The new Mini now adds Wi-Fi, which means that it's a much more capable and well-rounded router for mobile use, where it can really now stand on its own. Before we get too deep into the technical specs and whatnot, let's just kind of quickly go over what you get when you pick this up. So it largely follows the format of the current BR1 Mini chassis. So you have your 4-pin power connector here that also gives you ignition sensing and some GPIO capabilities with that power input. If you were looking to power a relay or something else, there is one pin for that. So you've got a fairly decent DC power input range here. It's going to come with an AC adapter. We'll show you kind of a picture of the overview of everything in the box, but then we have optional direct wire DC kits, and this will really function anywhere from 12 to 36 volts. I think it's technically like down into the 9-volt range, but that would really just be a very dead 12-volt battery at that point for the most part. Moving on, we've got 3 status lights up here. Our status light that tells us if the unit is online and booted, green meaning, solid green meaning it's up and online, blinking green meaning it's booting up, or solid red meaning something's wrong or it just got plugged in. So kind of just a quick glance light that tells you what's going on. Then you have your Wi-Fi and your cellular lights. Wi-Fi would tell you if the local wireless that's broadcasting to your devices is online, and then the cellular would be blinking if it was trying to connect, or solid if it was connected to the network already, or off if you disabled the cellular. Moving on to your Ethernet ports here, you've got 2 LAN ports for connecting up local devices, and a third port, which is a WAN port, meaning that this would be for connecting an external internet device, for example, a Starlink, to this mobile router. Now, that is assignable over to a LAN as well. So you could technically have 3 LAN ports, and you can just do that in the software interface depending on what your needs are. Peplink has included some status LEDs here so you can tell if those are linked up. And one note before we flip around to the other side of the device, the LAN port here is a PoE input port that can actually power up this device. We'll talk a little bit more about how that might come into hand and where you might be able to use that. Specifically, a big one for us would be if you were thinking about the Max enclosure and you wanted to put something like this up on the roof of your marine or vehicle application and just have one wire coming down to give you the Ethernet connectivity, as well as powering this device up on the roof with a single Ethernet cable, like a Cat5 E or Cat6 Ethernet cable. You can now do that with the Mini. So this pairs really nice with the Max enclosure. Moving on, just kind of finishing up what we see here, we've got our 4 cellular connections up at the top, and we've got our Wi-Fi's here. It is of note to mention that this unit, really because they just didn't have any room for it, is not does not have GPS. So it doesn't have GPS functionality. Although, if you did pair this with a Starlink, there is kind of a little known feature that this can actually grab GPS data from your Starlink if you enable it in the Starlink app, which could enable GPS functionality if you were looking to see where your vehicle is located at any time using the InControl 2 cloud management software that is included, licensed with the device for 1 year as part of your PrimeCare subscription. Rounding out this side, just kind of finishing up the physical overview of the device, you'll see back here we've got 2 SIM card slots, SIM A and SIM B. Those are nano SIM card slots on this single 5G mobile router. So what that essentially means is that single modem can connect via 2 SIM cards, one at a time. In the interface, you can switch between SIM A or SIM B. The modem will reboot and then connect on that other carrier. This device is designed to work on all of the major US carriers and really all of the North American carriers, but specifically it's certified on Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and works also with US Cellular, Google Fi, and just about anything else. The modem inside here, which we'll talk about in a minute, is the X62 chipset, and it's going to connect to pretty much any carrier you want, both in the US and also globally. In addition to the 2 physical SIM card slots, you have 2 eSIM profile slots, which you can't see because they're virtual, but you could have technically your SIM A, your SIM B, and then activate eSIM A and eSIM B. If you're interested in eSIM, I highly recommend you check out RoamLink. We can virtually activate an eSIM plan for you near instantly on this device, and with no contracts. As you travel, you can turn on and off that service without having to reactivate the eSIM. You simply call us and the device will come back online and start working. It's one of the benefits of RoamLink, which we've designed to work with Peplink devices. Check out the listing page with specifics about PrimeCare. But what PrimeCare essentially is it's a licensed-based warranty. So you do, as part of PrimeCare, get a hardware warranty that can be extendable if you extend your PrimeCare licensing, and it also unlocks certain features inside of the device. Check the listing page for a complete list of features, but some of the big kind of primary ones that it will unlock in the Mini specifically are the ability for the device to automatically fail over on multiple connections, and it unlocks certain other functionality like Speed Fusion, which allows you to combine or connect multiple connections together. This is a single 5G cellular device. However, for mobile customers, a really kind of awesome way to use this device would be to plug a Starlink into this WAN port, or possibly like a T-Mobile Home or some other type of Ethernet-based mobile internet solution that you might have, and then use it with the 5G cellular to give yourself redundancy so that you have more than one connection on the road. We have separate videos on Speed Fusion and other explanational videos on PrimeCare, and specifically if you want to dive really deep into that stuff, I highly recommend you check out our membership at membership.mobilemustHave.com. We have a specific recorded webinar where Chris, Sheree, and I go through what PrimeCare is. We go through how load balancing works. We go through how Speed Fusion works. We go through all of the technical terminology. So from the moment you kind of get this out of the box and you get started, all the way up to being an advanced user, we've got content for you covered, as well as our Peplink and Starlink resource centers and forums to help you kind of on your journey on the way. Memberships go a bit further than that in that they also give you 10% off your hardware purchase, and they give you discounts on data plans, upgraded 2-day shipping, and a whole ton of other stuff. So they typically pay for themselves in the first year. I'll kind of stop talking about memberships. If you've seen any of my videos, you probably know that already, but you can check it out at membership.mobilemusthave.com. Wrapping up kind of the summary of this device before we go into some more technical specifications, just finishing up what's in the box. You have the mobile router, you have the 120 volt AC to DC power adapter that comes with it, you have your 4 cellular antennas, you have your 2 Wi-Fi antennas, you have your quick start manual, and then you have some wire management Peplink branded, Velcro essentially, to kind of round out the kit, giving you everything you need to get started for mobile internet. Moving on to some of the specifications, the 5G modem inside here is an X62 chipset. So what that's going to give you is a max theoretical speed of 4 gigabits per second on the download side and 900 megabits on the upload side when connected to 5G. Again, it's theoretical. I kind of tell folks that in a more realistic world, you're talking about a tenth of that. So that would be like 400 megabits of speed that you could expect with a really nice, strong 5G signal. Much faster than anything you'd see out of Starlink, and we've definitely seen devices like this handle some pretty fast 5G speeds. It's also a 4G capable device. On the 4G side, it's a category 20, and that will allow you, when you're not in a 5G coverage area, to fail over to the fastest 4G technology available at the time of filming of this. Diving a bit more into the specifications for a minute, and we'll get more into that when we talk about kind of the side-by-side comparisons and who might this be best for. This has a max theoretical router throughput of 300 megabits per second. So the processor that's actually handling the traffic between the outside internet and your inside network has a max throughput of 300 megabits per second. Moving on to the Wi-Fi side of things, this has a Wi-Fi 5 chipset. So Wi-Fi 5 is getting a bit along in its years. It's been around for a while, but it has been kind of the mainstay Wi-Fi for kind of business internet devices up until this point at the entry level. So when you start to step into some of the more advanced units, you'll see Wi-Fi 6 technology, but the Wi-Fi 5 technology for mobile use is more than capable of doing just about anything you can think of on the road. Streaming Netflix, all of those things are absolutely fine with this device. Wi-Fi 5 technology is dual band, so it's going to be 2.4 gigahertz, which is going to maximize your long range effectiveness, and 5 gigahertz, which is going to maximize your speed, but give you shorter range. And the antennas are capable of simultaneously broadcasting both, so that's a nice feature. In addition, these can play double duty and give you what's called Wi-Fi as WAN technology. What that means is you can connect out to campground Wi-Fi, Starbucks Wi-Fi, great Wi-Fi at McDonald's, believe it or not, and other public Wi-Fi networks, and use that public Wi-Fi to then rebroadcast inside of your RV or whatever application you have, your mobile application, to be another internet source. So technically, as I'm doing here in this campground, I'm connected to the campground Wi-Fi, and then I'm also connected to 5G, and I have the ability to combine those into one more resilient connection. Campground Wi-Fi is not always the best, but in this particular park, it tends to work fairly well, and it's a nice backup for me that I don't have to pay for because it's included here. Another specification I think that's worth highlighting in this device is its power consumption. The non-Wi-Fi variant of this is going to use 11 watts of power. That's very little power. The Wi-Fi variant, this one's going to use 13 watts of power. So it is a whisperer in terms of its power consumption compared to a Starlink or something else that's going to be 70, 80, possibly 150, depending on the conditions, watts of power. So substantially harder hit on your batteries. The Mini is going to have slightly less power on its Wi-Fi. It's in the specifications than some of the other models, but we find that it tends to perform pretty well for folks up to, I'd say, probably about 40 feet. And you can always add an external access point if you need additional coverage or stronger Wi-Fi. Last, this is a ruggedized device designed for mobile use. So it has a temperature range of negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit up to 149 degrees Fahrenheit in terms of its usable temperature range. So that's extreme, and it's designed to be able to be left in a hot car that's locked and then unlocked, boot up, and works for police, ambulance, fire, first responder type folks. So in an RV application, that can be really handy, especially if you're mounting it up in a high cabinet where temperatures may fluctuate. Most of the other Peplink devices share that ruggedized design and functionality, but there are a few that we sell quite a few of that don't. So we'll talk about that when we do our comparison in a minute. Rounding out some of the geeky spec stuff, it's important to note that this device can throughput up to 80 megabits of second on Speed Fusion with an unencrypted connection, or 60 megabits with an encrypted connection. So what that basically means is if you're using that SD-WAN technology to combine multiple internet connections together, you're going to have a max unencrypted throughput of that combined pipe of 80 megabits per second. Now, you might be thinking, wow, he said 4 gigabits on the 5G download, and 80 megabits is, you know, much less than that. That's 80 versus 4,000. Like, that's not going to get it done for me. Honestly, for the most part, that's going to be enough for the average person with 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 people inside of a mobile use application. We tend to find if you're using the internet for basic, you know, Netflix, using computer Zoom calls, kind of just trying to keep things working without thinking about it a lot. And you'll want to take advantage of connecting multiple connections together for your more important internet traffic, maybe for work. That 80 megabits per second, if you're combining, say, Starlink and 5G, is going to be more than enough for you to do everything. And the added reliability of having 2 connections kind of combined as one, so that if one fails, you're not losing that important phone call, far outweighs any limitation on the speed side. But you can get some higher speeds with certain other models, which we'll get to in a minute. All right, so let's talk about who this is for. And if it's not for you, we're going to cover some of the popular models that it would be for. So hopefully that'll kind of give you an idea in this video of where you might want to end up. So this is one of the most aggressively priced mobile internet routers that's going to run the Peplink software that has been known for just giving extremely reliable and resilient mobile internet to folks. So at the time of filming of this, you're looking at a price point of around $549, which gives you the included Wi-Fi. I could see this being very popular for van use, for part-time use, and for weekend warriors, and possibly even for full-time use. I would say that this is going to function very well as a standalone 5G mobile router where your only internet source is the 5G cellular embedded modem. When you're like, I just want to pay for one bill. If the internet blips for a second here or there, I'm okay with that. I just want to have one connection and know I can stream my Netflix and do my work and everything else. But, you know, occasionally if that connection disconnects or whatnot, it'll come back and I'm okay with that. I think that's really where this is going to shine. It's going to give you access to all of the 5G bands with one of the latest 5G modems out there. It's going to give you exceptional speed and performance, and likely outperform Starlink from a speed perspective as long as you're on a good plan like a Roamlink plan most of the time when you're traveling around the world. If you add in an external antenna to this, which we have in our bundles, that's going to give you significant increase in range, you know, northwards of 400-500% increase in signal strength would be kind of a fairly conservative way to approach that in most situations with a roof antenna, like some of the Parsec Huskies and other variants we have, or the Peplink 42G is a great roof antenna that would pair with this. And that's going to just be a great entry level. I want to get it in. I want to have internet, and I don't really want to think about it much beyond that. So this device really kind of fits the bill for those types of folks. For folks who want to now step it up and add a second connection. So you're like, you know, I want this 5G, but I also am thinking about adding Starlink so that I can go even further out where there's no cell signal. Or maybe you're thinking about taking a trip up to Canada or down into Mexico. That's where Starlink really shines. They can do non-US based internet with high gigabytes at a very aggressive price. So in the US, you may be looking at the 5G because it's faster, and you may be looking at Starlink because it can get you out further, national parks, and possibly up to Canada and Mexico. This device can really hold its own pairing those two devices together. With your PrimeCare subscription, you have the ability to bond multiple connections together. It would pair your 5G with Starlink, and it gives you most of the capabilities that you see in these more expensive routers. And they are much more expensive. Like, this is the BR1 Pro 5G, which is basically this one's, you know, older sister or older brother, and this is $1,000. So you're almost double the price for the same 5G X62 embedded modem. So, you know, that's a lot more money if your use case is kind of on that kind of middle of the road entry level side of things. The next place that this really shines is if you're one of the folks that is thinking about the max enclosure. If you're like, I don't really want to run a big bundle of wires up to my roof with one of these antennas that has 7 or 8 wires coming down from it, or 11 in some cases for some of these big boys. But in this case, it would be 7. Well, 6 actually, because you don't have GPS, but they don't make a 6 antenna. So you're going to buy a 7-in-1 antenna, but you're saying, you know, that's not really for me. I want to put this up on the roof and I'm thinking about using the max enclosure. This would be a very interesting option for you. So let's say you had like a WineGuard Connect 2.0 that was pre-installed on your rig, or a Wi-Fi Ranger that was pre-installed that you're not using or that you're not happy with. There's an Ethernet cable up on the roof that you could repurpose and reuse. You could get a max enclosure that has the cellular and Wi-Fi antennas built into the enclosure, put this in the enclosure and plug that existing Ethernet cable into this PoE input, and it would power up the device. And you'd have to do very little in terms of anything up on the roof to redo some wiring. Even if you don't have one of those and you want to add an Ethernet cable up to the roof, that's one cable and it's a small cable and it's pretty easy to do. So that is really where this guy's going to shine. All the other devices either won't fit in the max container, the max antenna, or they don't have PoE input like this. So you've got to start to do some adapters to get them to power up, and it gets a little bit complicated. Now, note for folks who are thinking like, that's what I want to do, just remember your Wi-Fi is now going to transmit from up on the roof. So it may be worth it if you're going to do something like that to possibly think about a second access point. But you could add another access point and have this and still be under the price of this. So it's a very interesting and attractive installation use case if you're thinking about the max and the antenna max, and if you're thinking about simplifying your wiring setup. One thing to note on the antenna max or this is that what powers this is power over Ethernet. So you can't just plug in an Ethernet cable and then plug it into some old, router that's in the basement and this will power up. So you're going to need a power over Ethernet injector. So we have injectors at MobileMustHave.com that'll run on 12 volts and then they'll step up and power this up in one nice little convenient box that you could put down in the basement. Or if you were thinking about adding that wireless access point in addition, so you had Wi-Fi up on the roof and inside, I would recommend you go with one of our PoE switches. And those will all run on 12 volt DC and then step up and give you power over Ethernet to power this and an access point. So it's a really nice rounded out solution, and it's coming in at a lower price point than the BR1 Pro 5G. All right, so then that's it. You buy this. Don't buy the BR1 Pro 5G. Don't even think about it. Well, if it was my money, I would be going here, which is the BR2, which we've talked a lot about, and we'll talk about that in a second. But specifically talking about the BR1 Pro 5G, this is where you start to get into thinking about multiple connections working at the same time, and a kind of like a central command center that has a lot of power and routing capacity. So with the BR1 Pro 5G, and we've got separate videos on it, this is going to allow you to combine multiple connections and do essentially what this does. It's almost twice the price, but what you're stepping into here is a router that has a 1 gigabit throughput versus 300 megabit here. So it's 1,000 here, 300 here. Again, very capable, but it's just a more processing power to handle more transactions at a time while it's managing the internet for you. This also has a max combined speed fusion throughput. So like, let's say you were combining Starlink and the 5G here, and maybe you even wanted to add another 5G to like you could actually assign one of these LAN ports as a virtual WAN and plug this into this and get dual 5G as an example. The processor in here can do 400 megabits of unencrypted speed fusion to combine all of those connections. So as things get faster with 5G, and maybe you want to go with dual 5G and Starlink starts to improve its speed, that 80 megabits of max throughput on this might start to cap you a little bit. So for the average person who's just browsing the internet and enjoying things, this is going to be perfectly fine. But if you're thinking about doing a lot of multi-WAN, meaning multiple internet connections and combining them, this is really kind of where you want to be. This can do it on occasion and it can work, but I think if you're thinking, I definitely want more than one connection, start looking at the Pro series. Now, what is this? This is essentially that, but two of them combined into one, basically. We have a separate video on the BR2, but I mean, you can kind of get the idea from all those antenna connection ports on the back. This is dual 5G. So instead of one 5G modem, you have two, 4 SIM slots instead of 2, GPS built in here, and an additional USB port here to add another 5G. So you could technically do 3 5Gs on this. Same throughput as this, 400 megabits max on the SpeedFusion and 1 gigabit on the router itself, but you just are stepping up the amount of stuff going on that you can include. This has 2 WAN ports on it, so you could plug in 2 Starlinks, or a T-Mobile Home as an example, and a Starlink, and a 5G, and 2 5Gs embedded. This is our gold standard. We see this a lot going in where folks just do not want to think about the internet. They want to know they're going to buy one device. It's going to last them for the duration of while they're on the road. Now note, this is like $28.99 or so, in that range at the time of filming this. So it's an expensive piece of equipment and it's an investment. But this is essentially what I run on here. Doing multiple Zoom calls a day. I have 3 simultaneous 5G connections and my fixed mount Starlink here. I'm going to do a video on my setup very soon. But essentially, I never think about the internet. If I'm driving through a tunnel, if I'm parking under a tree, whatever, if Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T, which are all running on my Roamlink connections, go down, I automatically fail over to another carrier. And because there's always at least one running at any given time, my internet never goes down and I never think about it. It really is just like home internet here. And with 2 kids, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, mom screaming, everything's got to get, working with the TVs and YouTube and me doing my work here and all of the family connection calls and all that stuff. We never log into our Peplink and look at the dashboard other than if we're just curious or we're goofing off. It really just runs itself. So that investment, and you have to kind of enable some other stuff to get that all working, costs a few bucks. But if that's what you're looking for, think about this. The Mini, great product, absolutely great. For folks that look at the internet, want it to work, don't want to think about it a lot, but if it goes down occasionally or it's not going to give them the most amazing speed test ever, they're okay with that. So those are the kind of comparison options of what you see on the landscape today. But there is one additional option that I didn't talk about here, and that is the B1 5G, which is an interesting option that we also have a separate video on. I don't have a B1 5G here with me today, but the B1 5G, which I'll show you a picture of here, is really a router that's designed not for mobile use. It's for like small office, home office use, but it has a lot of the features of the big boys at a lower price point. So the B1 5G is around $599, and it has the 1 gigabit faster processor in it, and it has 2 WAN ports like this, so you could plug in 2 Starlinks, and it has Wi-Fi 6, and it has a USB port, so you could technically add a third 5G. It's got a lot of stuff going on. Let's talk about what it doesn't have. It doesn't have GPS, and it's not really built for a rugged heat environment. It's designed to work up to, I think, like 129 or so degrees Fahrenheit. So sticking it in a hot cabinet in a vehicle that doesn't have climate control running all the time will probably be problematic for you. So that just kind of, I want to mention that if you're looking at the B1 5G, you're looking at the Mini, you're looking at this, you're looking at the B1 Pro 5G, the BR2, that's one of the things to consider. These are all rugged, the B1 5G is not. Well, that pretty much wraps everything up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can reach out to our team at info@mobilemusthave.com. You can also start up a chat in the bottom right-hand corner of our website, mobilemusthave.com. Or if you're interested in having a one-on-one consultation on the phone to talk about various options, you can schedule that at talk.mobilemusthave.com. You can also just give us a call if you want. Our phone number is at the top of our website, MobileMustHave.com as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the road.